We're going to go ahead and get started. All right, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Dope Muslim Woman podcast live Facebook event. We are here featuring one amazing guest with my co-host as well. This podcast live event is a very special event called Free Imam Jamil Alameen. Also, what happened to H.Rap Brown. We're going to be discussing this in detail. My name is Sabria Mills, and I'm the host of the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. And I would like to welcome all of you guys, and I would like to encourage you guys to share this event, this podcast, create watch parties so that you can make sure that everybody's involved. Please feel free to use the chat box to interact with one another, but we will be taking questions and answers at the end of the podcast, inshallah. All right, so again, I'm gonna get ready to introduce these dope brothers right here in front of me, but I did want to just let you guys know that the Dope Muslim Woman podcast, we are a platform originally designed for women to show the power of owning our own narratives and being authentic in our own truth with our commitment and our obedience to Allah. But our content, what it does is it intends to smash racial, ethnic, religious, and gender barriers by creating a culture of authentic dialogue and mutual understanding. We believe in bringing content that matters, content that impacts change, content that increases dialogue. So that's why this topic is so vital and important for us here to discuss today. So I'm going to begin, and I'm going to just introduce our brothers here. I'm going to start with our co-host for tonight, our moderator. I'm very humbled to introduce him, attorney Naji Mujahid. He's the legal liaison for the Imam Jamil Action Network, Imam Jamil Alameen, Action Network. He's also a trusted friend to the show. He's a criminal defense and family law attorney in Philadelphia. He became involved in political prisoner support work while working as a journalist. He attended a press conference in 2007 featuring the San Francisco 8. He would later join the Jericho Amnesty movement, and in 2008, he co-founded the Black August Planning Organization in Washington, D.C., whose mission was to ensure that political prisoners, particularly those from the Black Liberation Movement, are supported and not forgotten. Welcome to the show, Naji. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me. Very honored and pleased to be a part of this broadcast here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining the show. We're definitely humbled to have you. And super humbled to, this man doesn't need an introduction. I'm sure everybody that's on the live now knows who he is, but I'm going to introduce him, irregardless of that. Our brother is, he's a native to Atlanta. He's an attorney. He's a 2012 graduate of the John Marshall Law School. He's a business developer. He's a very dope rapper. And he is the son of attorney Karima Alameen and Imam Jamil Alameen. Kyrie Alameen, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
No, I appreciate you for reaching out and giving me this opportunity. We're trying to reach as many people as we can with what we got going on right now. So this should be a big help.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I'm really happy to have you here on the show and to talk about our leader, Imam Jamil Alameen. It's been 20 years, and it's been 20 years. So we're definitely going to have this discussion and go in detail about his story and his case, and then talk about the importance of what we can do now. This conversation is not just about it's just not just a talk. It's not just dialogue. We want action at the end of it, and we'll kind of get to that, inshallah. But I'm going to go ahead and begin this conversation. I'm going to open up this dialogue with an opening monologue presented by me. I wanted to present a concise report on the history of Imam Jamil Alameen and the major events leading up to the night of March 16, 2000, which led to his subsequent arrest and conviction. This opening statement will highlight a pattern of targeting, harassment, and persecution of Imam Jamil Alameen by the United States government. We will get into our questions to Kyrie. And I did want to reference that Ubaid H. Siddiqui. I also took a lot of direct quotes from him in his analysis of Imam Jamil Alameen. So Hubert Gerald Rap Brown was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The name Rap was given to him in respect for the word games that he played with other boys on the streets. demonstrating his command of language, a sharp wit, and a mature political sensibility. In 1964, at the age of 20, Imam Jamil, then known as H.Rap Brown, left Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, moved to Washington, D.C., and joined the Nonviolent Action Group, otherwise known as NAG. His activities with NAG soon drew him to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, which was then engaged in voter registration drives in the Deep South. H.Rap Brown quickly distinguished himself as a charismatic leader and effective organizer. On July 24th, 1967, in Cambridge, Maryland, Imam Jamil spoke to a crowd in his political autobiography, he mentioned, "Die Nigger Die." Imam Jamil recalls that after giving his speech, a group of cops hiding behind a bush opened fire on him and those around him. Imam Jamil was scraped by a shotgun pellet in the head, but he and the others managed to get away. Once word spread that the cops opened fire on Imam Jamil, others took to the street to express their outrage. Not too long after, an elementary school for Black children was set ablaze. Despite the attack on Imam Jamil Al-Amin, he was charged with arson and inciting a riot for simply speaking at the event. On April 11th, 1968, the Rap Brown Federal Anti-Riot Act was passed, making it illegal to travel from one state to another, write a letter, make a phone call, or speak on radio or television with the intent, quote unquote, to encourage a person to riot. The FBI aimed its infamous counterintelligence program, otherwise known as COINTELPRO, to focus on Black nationalist hate groups in order to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize them, and I quote them, as explicitly stated in a memo written by Hoover on August 25th, 1967, and sent to all FBI offices. According to FBI records, one of the names repeatedly targeted by COINTELPRO was H.Rap Brown. By 1970, Imam Jamil was placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for simply failing to appear for trial on the fabricated, inciting arson and riot charges. After the many attempts on his life, Imam Jamil disappeared and didn't officially resurface until October 16, 1971. On that night, Imam Jamil was shot and beaten by New York City police officers on top of a Manhattan rooftop. Imam Jamil and two others were later charged and convicted of robbing the patrons of the Red Carpet Lounge. However, there are many conflicting stories around this alleged incident. Regardless, Imam Jamil spent 5 years in prison, during which he converted to Islam. By 1976, Imam Jamil was released from prison and traveled to the city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia for the annual Hajj. When he returned, he settled in the Atlanta's Western community, where over time he established the Community Mosque of Atlanta and operated a small grocery store. It was there where he led his community in the expulsion of drugs, prostitutes, and gang violence from the surrounding neighborhoods. He was also involved on a national level in gang intervention and served as a national leader for mosques around this country. In the 1990s, his focus grew nationally and then internationally. It is important to mention that Imam Jamil rose to prominence on the national Muslim scene as he became a founding member of the Islamic Shura Council of North America, which was an umbrella institution that coordinated efforts among the 4 largest Muslim organizations in this country. He helped organize the Bosnian Task Force, leading a march on Washington, D.C., and he also was a part of the Palestinian resistance. Soon enough, the federal authorities continued a more aggressive approach of surveillance by placing FBI informants in Imam Jamil's Atlanta community to try to connect him with criminal activity. During this time, Imam Jamil was arrested by a joint task force and charged with shooting a 22-year-old William Miles in the leg as he walked across the street toward Imam Jamil's store on July 26, 1995. Less than a month later, Miles recanted, saying that the police pressured him to identify Imam Jamil, despite Miles not actually seeing who wounded him. The charges were soon dropped and Imam Jamil was freed. On May 31st, 1999, Imam Jamil was pulled over by Cobb County Police Officer Johnny Mack around 5:30 p.m. During the search of Imam Jamil Al-Amin, a bill of sale for the car and badge was discovered on him. The bill of sale indicated that Imam Jamil was the rightful owner of the vehicle, and an honorary badge was issued to Imam Jamil from the mayor of Whitehall, Alabama, John Jackson. Still, Imam Jamil was charged with driving a stolen car, driving with expired insurance, and impersonating a police officer. It is important to mention that these charges were subsequently dismissed as it was found to be an unconstitutional traffic stop. Imam Jamil's traffic court case scheduled for Friday, January 28th, 2000, it was. However, the courthouse was closed that day due to a major storm that hit the area. The storm provided the setup for that final fateful charge. And I thank you for your patience as we went through that monologue. And I wanted to jump right into a conversation with you, Kyrie. Mashallah, we just heard, the story of your father, basically what he meant to, his community, to the world, both politically when he was H.Rap Brown and as well as in the Muslim community on a national, international level. We wanted to just familiarize ourselves a little bit better with him as the father, the man that you know him as. Only you can pretty much share that type of insight with us. Who was he? And what type of father was he to you? To you?
Yeah, it is for sure. Current, definitely. Yeah, no, I get asked that a lot, and it's funny because my mom actually, one of the things she likes to ask me is if I had a normal, if I feel like I had a normal childhood, and my response to her is always, it's the only one I had, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. So, I guess it is, normal. But as far as how my father was, he was super involved. To be who he was, I had no idea really the magnitude as a young person around him. It was because he was just dad to me. And that can be seen in the, picture behind me where I'm on his back. That was actually, he was on stage at a conference speaking, and that didn't matter to me. It's like, oh, there's my dad. Let me run up there real quick and go climb on him. So, he came to all the basketball games. He coached me for some seasons as a basketball player. And now we talk almost every day. Sometimes I'll miss a call because they let him out at weird times because of the COVID thing. He doesn't have a schedule. And so I might miss a call a day, but he tries to call me every day. And some people get a little upset with me because I can't share with them what we talk about because it's a father and son conversation. It's not for everybody. He's still teaching me and molding me. So as far as fathers go, he gets Father of the Year for me every year. That's just what it is. And inshallah, when I have my kids, that's the kind of involvement and feeling that I can give them, no matter how important or whatever I may be down the road. They don't understand that I'm just dad. So if I can do that, then I feel like I succeeded.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering, Kyrie, if you could take us back to March 16th, 2000. That's kind of where I stopped this monologue. What happened on that night that resulted in the arrest of your father?
Well, the record shows one thing, but what actually happened is in my opinion, and really at this point, in fact, totally different. We went out to eat that night. So before anything happened, we were actually at Red Lobster, my mother, my father, myself. And so we went out to eat, and then when we left Red Lobster, he dropped us off at the house, and he left to go to the masjid as he always did for Isha, I believe was what time it was. Yeah, it was about Isha time. And that's where, my firsthand knowledge ends, and I have to start getting into what we know from the evidence. And the evidence is interesting because the most important piece of the evidence is the confession from Otis Jackson, because he actually gives a detailed description of everything that happened after, I guess the last time I saw my father. And Otis walks us through the fact that he came to the West End that evening looking for my father because he wanted to discuss some things with him, because he knew my father was the leader of that community and Otis was the leader of a gang moving toward more positive things in his mind, at least.
Right.
But he didn't find my father. And in the process of searching for my father, the police came to serve a warrant. And this warrant was for a traffic stop that you mentioned where they found the bill of sale and the honorary badge. So this warrant was stemming back to then. So they were coming to look for my father, and instead they met Otis Jackson, whose organization is also very anti-police. And Otis Jackson was actually not supposed to be where he was. He was on parole and he should have been at work, and he had a shift change, which gave him some free time to do whatever he wanted to do. And so when he saw the police, and these are his words, when he saw the police, his first thought was, I don't want them to run my name and things like that, because I'm not supposed to be here and I don't want to go back to prison for violating parole for something like this. So he started to shoot. And that is his MO. He does that. That's what he does. He started to shoot with his pistol first, and then he went to his trunk where he had other weapons. And the weapons he left on the scene, which is how people ask, how did they get from Georgia to Alabama? Well, he left the weapons on the scene. But we'll get into that, I'm sure, a little later. But as for what my father did, he did what he always does. He went to Salat. He made Salat. And out of his own words, he actually testified that he did come outside and he saw what was going on, and he jumped in his car and booked. And when he left because he said he didn't know exactly what the shooting was about. He thought maybe it might have been about some gang stuff or whatever, but whether it was that or what it ended up being, he knew he didn't want to be there for it. And so that's why actually in that song, I say, you ain't have to tell me nothing, because people be like, why? They said that the prosecutor asked, why would you leave without telling your family? And so that's why in the song, I'm like, you ain't got to tell me nothing. I understand why you had to just get up out of there. And so that's kind of a rundown of what happened with Otis Jackson and what happened with my father. My father went to Salat while all this was happening outside. He's finishing up. He comes out and gets in his car and leaves. And so while he's driving past, the glass shatters on the Mercedes. So a bullet hit the Mercedes, but never hit him, or that's what they say anyway. We don't have the Mercedes anymore, so we can't really look at it to figure out what happened to it.
Right.
Kyrie, I just want to be clear, because you mentioned that your father testified, and I know as we get on in the discussion, his testimony or lack of testimony is going to be something to discuss. But just to be clear, his testimony that you're referring to was during the one of the appeals.
Right. Well, yeah, it was
during the initial trial.
No, it wasn't during the initial trial. He actually testified. I don't even remember what year it was, but he wanted to make sure that he got a statement on the record as to what he had going on, because that mock cross-examination made it seem like he didn't have a story to tell as far as where he was and what he was doing. So he wanted that on a record. I actually believe he testified in Alabama and that's when he was able to tell that story, and not on the stand at one of the appeals, but I could be mistaken.
And one of the things you mentioned about Otis Jackson, so he was from, I think it was the Vice Lords.
Yeah.
Right? So
Almighty Vice Lord Nation.
The Imam Jamil, through his gang peace work, he had the respect of the gangs, like around, especially the major gangs around the country. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, he worked with Brother Khaled out of Cleveland. They worked on
Khaled Samad.
Yeah, they worked on some on a peace, basically on a peace treaty, I guess you would call it, if you want to call it that, of the street nations, as they like to call it, as opposed to gangs. And my father, he understood the importance of galvanizing those groups. Those groups are major forces, whether it's for good or bad is up to us how we use it, but they're major forces across the country. And so he understood that there's power in that, and there's power in them unifying with us and everyone at our color to get our goals and things accomplished. But the first thing that was necessary was for them to see and understand that peace had to be on the menu, so to speak.
Yeah.
Sabria, did you have a question?
No, I mean, you explained what happened. Could you actually walk us through what happened after that night? So with your father and the subsequent arrest.
Well, right after the shooting took place, the first kind of weird or obscure fact is that the FBI was the first responder, not the state police, not the Fulton County. No, it was the federal, it was the FBI.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
Go ahead.
I didn't want to lose this point. Another question about going back to, they were there to serve a warrant. And I was
Yeah.
wondering, is it typical for them to send the sheriffs out to serve a warrant for a traffic case?
No, no, I wouldn't say so. Not especially not, at Isha, Isha time.
Yeah, right.
But
All right. But yeah,
yeah,
so
no,
I'm
it
sorry,
was.
I didn't mean to, so you were about to talk about the following days after after
Well,
the
really, just later on that evening when the FBI, the FBI shows up on the scene, which is strange, and the FBI is telling the brothers in the community they can't be outside, they can't be on the block for whatever reason. And so that was strange to us. But the manhunt, so to speak, begins, and the newspaper and everybody and well, really just the news and the media, they had already vilified the Imam. At this point, it was, we're searching for this militant or ex Black Panther will be found. Ambush is what they were calling it in the paper. This was before he was even caught, and so that also goes to a jury that's not necessarily thinking clearly. But they end up getting a tip, I believe, that he may be in Whitehall, but Whitehall was also a known location of his. And so they go on a manhunt, and the first place they go is apparently Whitehall. And that is eventually where they end up finding him. One misconception or lie that was told was that there was an exchange of gunfire when they first saw my father, and that just isn't true. There wasn't an exchange of gunfire. If there was gunfire, it came from them, and that was testified to by people on the scene. There was no return fire, but there was possibly fire in the direction of the person. And then they later find my father in the woods in Whitehall, in Whitehall, Alabama. They do not find a weapon. They just find my father. Later that evening, they actually walk through, and one of the local police officers, is with an FBI agent who points out a pistol that's on the ground, and they say, you know what, we're going to come back and look around a little bit more tomorrow. But that local officer made a point of saying the gun looked as if it was placed there, not dropped or anything like that. It looked placed, and we actually have a picture of it. It has a plastic bag wrapped around it. There were no fingerprints on it. There's no DNA on any of the weapons that were found. There are no fingerprints linking my father to the weapons. There's no physical evidence at all, no DNA. But they come back out the next day, and the FBI again actually points out to the local officers, like, hey, that looks like a clip. And they look down, and it is a clip, and it was taped up. And then he's like, hey, there looks like a rifle over there. And these are the FBI agents just kind of leading the officers to the evidence. And so that's why we initially started to think that maybe they planted this evidence. And we have an agent who actually has a history of that, who was on this case and who perjured himself on the stand. And so we wholeheartedly believe that the weapons came from Atlanta to Alabama with one of the FBI agents, and they were left behind by Otis Jackson, who admits to doing the shooting and leaving the weapons behind. So,
and the FBI agent you mentioned, that's the same one who stomped on and spit on Imam Jamil during the course of the arrest, right?
Right. And his history is he's with guns being planted. He's actually planted another handgun that had no physical evidence linking anybody to it, but in that case, he shot the person in the back of the head before he planted the weapon, and so he had to plant the weapon to say that the person had a gun. That's why he shot him. So I tell people, I guess we got lucky because he just planted the weapon. He didn't get an opportunity to finish the job. And one of the officers down there actually told my father, please don't move while you're on the ground because they intend to kill you. So it was deeper than rap, as they say.
Yeah, and we see the history. Najee, do you want to go ahead and follow up in regards to kind of what happened with the trial?
Yeah, so following the conviction in 2002, the fight for Imam Jamil's freedom and to prove his innocence didn't stop there. In fact, there was a direct appeal immediately after the conviction. And then following that, there were several habeas corpus petitions at both the state and federal level. Although those petitions have yet to be successful, there's still one pending. One notable fact is that the courts have ruled several times that there were in fact constitutional violations in Imam Jamil's case, multiple constitutional violations in his case, but the courts also determined that they were what is referred to as a harmless error. In other words, they admit that there was wrongdoing, they admit that there was prosecutorial misconduct, but they go on to say, but we would have found you guilty anyway, so it doesn't matter. The habeas.
Let me cut you off right
Okay.
on that point, just because our last appeal with the 11th, second to last, because we went up to the Supreme Court, but the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, that wasn't the actual language. Their language was more regret than anything. It wasn't that it was actually harmful. It was just that we couldn't prove that there was harm. And the reason we couldn't prove that there was harm is because we haven't been able to allow into evidence the affidavit from a juror who stated the primary reason that they had a guilty vote was because my father didn't testify. That proves that this, constitutional violation, this mock cross-examination, pointing the jury to the fact that my father didn't testify, so we're going to do it for him, had an injurious effect. But we're not allowed to introduce that because it hadn't been introduced in the past. And so that's why we actually can't prove it, because of procedural issues, not because we literally can't prove it. And so their actual language is, we regret not being able to give you the relief that you deserve. But, that's just the way the cookie was crumbling. But not necessarily anymore. We have some opportunities to go ahead and enter all of this evidence. And the confession is another one that we just can't, we can't get it in there for real. We can't get it in. And so
I think sometimes it's hard for people to understand how, the courts have all of these, nuanced rules and special, procedures. It may seem like common sense. Well, if there's a juror who's saying that the jury may have been tainted by this, or there's a confession, a guy's confessing under oath multiple times, from day one, saying it wasn't him, but this, evidence isn't isn't admissible into the court for one reason or another. You began to allude to an avenue where all of this stuff will be able to be able to be brought in, and I guess that would be the Conviction Integrity Unit in Fulton County, Georgia. Can you talk about that? What that unit is and some of the evidence that the legal team intends to produce or to provide in the application for review.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason the confession didn't make it in to the original trial or the direct appeal was because the prosecution told us that told our legal defense team that Otis Jackson was mentally unstable and therefore wouldn't be credible on the stand.
And I think they also claimed that his ankle monitor would have shown that he wasn't able to be at the scene, but in fact, that wasn't true either.
Right, that wasn't true. His ankle monitor was defective, and we had a private investigator go look into that for us, and that's what that turned up. But what is good now is that they won't be able to use the mentally incompetent or unstable excuse anymore, because Otis just testified, and before he could testify in this other case, they had him evaluated by a medical professional, and they deemed him mentally competent to stand trial or to testify in trials. So we don't even have to talk about that anymore. So that's a blessing. But let's talk about the Conviction Integrity Unit. Our district attorney has a sordid past, a sordid history, so to speak, and he's running again right now for re-election. The GBI just brought him up on, not brought him up on charges, but they're investigating him as well. And so he's in dire need of political points. And so I think that's what the Conviction Integrity Unit was really meant to be. And what it is it looks into the integrity of past convictions to see if there were any wrongful convictions that need overturning or retrials that need granting. And I'll get into what the rubric is and what they're looking for in a second. But what set this ball in motion for us was when they had their inaugural ball or whatever it is to launch this unit, they had Ambassador Andrew Young speak as the keynote. And at the end of his speech, he asked them to look at my father's case, the Imam's case specifically, stating that he believes he was wrongfully convicted. And so there was a story done in the AJC about that. And from then on, that became our focus, because when we look at what their standard of review is, or standards of review are, we fit the mold in all but like one category. And so the first category that they're looking into are claims of actual innocence involving provable evidence. And so, you know, we have confessions of a mentally stable human being who's been confessing for 20 years. So that's provable evidence if there ever was some. They're looking at forensic testing of relevant evidence. Our forensics lady, the lady who worked for the state and did our forensics, she's since been fired because it was found that she was doing improper forensic testing, which led to wrongful convictions in the past. So she got fired, but that's the evidence that still applies to our case. So our evidence probably needs to be retested. On top of that, again, there was no physical evidence linking my father to the weapons or the crime scene. So we fit that mold. Claims involving relevant evidence not presented prior to conviction. Like the confession wasn't presented prior to conviction. We just talked about the juror affidavit that wasn't admitted prior to conviction. So the mental competency diagnosis wasn't admitted prior to conviction. So we fit that mold. And you only need to fit one of these categories for them to look at your case again. Cases of historic error. We just had the cumulative weight of the evidence overturned. That situation overturned, and I'll let Brother Najee talk more about that. That's what our habeas is about. But basically, in another case, they overturned the fact that, or they matter of fact, Brother Najee, I'm gonna let you talk about this because.
So one of the reasons that the initial appeal was denied was that when violations previously in the state of Georgia, if there was a violation alleged in a person's trial, that violation could be considered individually, and it could be determined whether or not there was a particular kind of error individually, but they couldn't look at them collectively. So if it was 2, 3, 4 different violations, they couldn't say, all right, well, none of these kind of tip the needle by themselves, but when you put them all together, you know, you have yourself a problem. That was the standard in Georgia up until 3 or 4 months ago when it was changed. And this overturned that particular issue in multiple cases. And Imam Jamil's case was mentioned specifically in that case as a case that it was overturning. So the habeas petition that was already pending was amended to include this, which, you know, could be promising, because now they can look at the different violations of the prosecutorial conduct and the Fifth Amendment right violation and those things, and look at them together and say, all right, well, they might be weightier when considered together, you know, enough to give a new trial. And the other issues in the current habeas corpus have to do with FBI records, FBI documents that were untimely, you know, provided to the defense. You know, in a criminal case, a person, if the prosecutor has evidence of the accused person's innocence, they have to turn that over. And that wasn't done in this case. The FBI didn't cooperate in providing their documentation, as was alluded to earlier. Imam Jamil has been under FBI investigation, you know, since the 60s, probably never let up. Definitely was still under investigation in 2000 when this happened. Kareem El-Amin, Esquire, his wife, through several FOIA requests, I think has received, there's 40,000 documents, and all of them haven't been turned over. But of those documents, there was one in particular that was a bolo, a be on the lookout of a suspect who fit the description of Otis Jackson. And there was also the police report that Kyrie mentioned earlier, where one of the investigating officers on the scene, Sergeant something or other, said that the evidence, the guns, looked like they had been placed there where they were found. You know, so those things are being brought up in this petition. And I would also mention, with regards to Otis Jackson's confession, this is important because anybody, the courts will not allow just anybody to confess to anything. You know, anybody, you can't just go confess to a crime and then get convicted of the crime solely on your own testimony. there has to be other evidence that corroborates the fact that you're saying that you did it. And in this case, the eyewitnesses who testified in Imam Jamil's case, the forensic evidence, all of it fits in with Otis
Video
Jackson's
camera evidence. There's so much. Matter of fact, let's talk about it.
Yeah, please, let's get that out. Let's
talk about it. So the description is, 5'8", 5'9", cold gray eyes. They both say they shot the assailant. And that was kind of the initial the initial African American glasses. Mm-hmm. That was the initial description. And my father is like a giant. He's 6'5". You can't mistake him for 5'8", 5'9", I promise. So he's 6'5". His glasses are always sunglasses. So seeing his cold, any color eyes wouldn't have worked, but his eyes are brown anyway. And he wasn't wounded. Otis Jackson admits to being wounded. He has, you can check the medical, he had somebody treat him. He was knocking on doors.
There was blood found on the scene.
Blood was found on the scene. And when they tested it, they decided to come back and say they couldn't figure out who it came from or what it was, because it didn't point to my father. But Otis said he was wounded. He was knocking on doors. The eyewitnesses say that there was a wounded man walking around knocking on doors. In the habeas, I was actually reading some old documentation that said there was actually video camera footage at a nearby medical facility that had a man jumping the fence trying to break in. So, it's like, he's 5'8". We have that on camera, him testifying to his height and things like that. It's everything points to him. And so, like Brother Najee said, you can't just say I did it and they say okay. Something has to say, well, maybe he did. And everything in this situation points to it was probably this dude. It was, and it definitely nothing points to the Imam except for that was his community. Mm-hmm. And his car was there, but that was his community. So like, his car's always there.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I think Najee, did you want to bring up the petition? So I want to talk a little bit more about Imam Jamil and his current status. But Kyrie, I do want you to go into detail, because right now, there's an active petition out. We are trying to get individuals to sign. I'm not sure what the goal is, but can you give us some very specific details in regards to the petition?
Sure. The biggest issue we've always had for 20 years has been there's been no real public support, like a real push. There's always been people, like we go to the Riadas and things like that, and you tend to see people there who remember him, but that's because we're in our bubble at that time. But the general public, it's never been an outcry, like, for instance, what we've just seen for an Ahmaud Arbery and things like that. Like, right. People ask me, what's the goal? And the goal is a result. And so in his situation, that shooting happened in February. So it took us to find out about it in May. But once we all found out about it and decided we ain't like it, in 2 days, they made an arrest. And so that's how things work. Brother Najee asked me, because we have the same district attorney in the conviction integrity unit, what's his motivation to change? And he doesn't have any motivation to make a change or do anything for us right now. But if a movement tells him we're paying attention and there will be, political or public ramifications for just doing the wrong thing. We're not asking him to do anything that he shouldn't do. It's the right thing to do. And they haven't done it because there hasn't been anybody watching. And so that's what the petition is for. The petition is to show them people are watching. And alhamdulillah, it's doing really well. We're at almost 7,500. And my goal is to get to 10,000 before we actually submit to the conviction integrity unit, and then 100,000 signatures while they're in the process of reviewing. Because I think those two numbers tell them, look, not only are people paying attention, but it's growing, the number of people that are paying attention. And it's just as important an issue, because if not more important an issue, because this is somebody who's put in the work for us already. Right. And so for us to just type a little bit, I think we can do that. We do it for so many other things and other reasons. It's time. He deserves it. He's owed this. And that's why we're asking for a retrial and not for people to make their own determinations about guilt or innocence, because that seems to make people uncomfortable. So now it's like, look, just give us the opportunity to prove to you he's innocent. You don't have to make that decision. But if you're okay with saying a fair trial is necessary, then that's what this petition is asking for. We just want a fair shot to present all the information and let the people decide then.
Is the
Yeah.
application otherwise ready to go and just waiting for the signatures? And,
No, it'll be ready this week. It'll be we're passing it back and forth between myself and the actual legal team that's going to submit it.
Okay, and what's the any idea what the timeline and the process looks like? Have they, is this unit so new that they haven't actually overturned any cases or anything?
It is that new. It's
Okay.
that new, and their office is currently not open, or they're working remotely, which means it's not open. Especially not the side units like the conviction integrity unit and things like that. But they say they'll be back by June 12th at midnight, and so we're looking at that time frame to make sure that.
Sorry, and Kyrie, just make sure can you just really quickly drop that petition link?
Yeah, it's
because people are asking in the chat.
Oh, I'll type it.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, so while Kyrie is putting that in the chat, please make sure that you are actively sharing it. If you have not signed it, please sign it now. Don't just sign it, but also share. There's other ways to get involved by donating and such. So please make sure that you're doing that now. But Kyrie, I really wanted to ask something I think is important in regards to some of the injustices that happened to your father while he was actually in prison. So after his arrest and conviction, what were some of the, I guess, violations that happened to Imam Jamil?
Well, they're ongoing. They're ongoing, but the first one, well, I don't know if this is even the first one, but he was in solitary confinement for the first maybe 14, 15 years of his sentence. No matter where he went, he was in solitary confinement, and their reasoning was it was for his protection. But it was not. It was just,
right.
Because he didn't request it. He didn't need it. That wasn't something he asked for. He wasn't in any danger. And so that was number one. And then, they moved him from state custody to federal custody about halfway through this 20 years. So about 10 years in. And the federal government has decided to keep him in the worst prisons that they have available from, he was in Colorado, Florence, Colorado. And then he was moved from Florence when his cancer came about. He had to go to, he bounced from a couple of prisons, but he landed in, what's the one in North Carolina? Butner. Yeah, he landed in Butner. He got his treatment in Butner, and then Butner had him shipped to where he is now, which is Tucson, Arizona. He's in population now, but the new injustice, they opened his legal mail. So we actually won a case, his legal mail case, which told them to stop opening his legal mail. But now the federal government is doing it. So we're going to have to probably submit again. And now he's being held in Tucson, which is a level 3 medical facility. And they've about a year and a half, 2 years ago, reclassified my father as a level 4 patient, which means he needs to be back at a Butner or something like that. But they keep telling him, nope, as long as you're stable, we're going to keep you here. But you just moved him from level 3 to level 4. So that means he's not stable. So you should probably move him out. And he's dealing with a lot of things. He's dealing with a little bit of everything. He has cancer. He's going blind because they won't treat his cataracts. He's been on a list for cataract surgery for almost a year and a half now as well. And they haven't treated that. So, it's kind of like some of the things are big things, some of the things are small things, but they're nitpicking and bullying him to a T, no matter where he goes, and whether it was state of Georgia or feds. And now the state of Georgia and the federal government play ping pong with excuses as to why they won't move him back to Georgia. The federal government says they won't move him to a federal facility in Georgia because they don't want to. And they won't send him back to Georgia because Georgia won't ask for him back. And when we talk to Georgia, they say, no, we won't ask for him back, but the federal government could just move him closer to Georgia if they wanted to in another federal facility. And so it's like asking your mom and asking your dad for stuff is what we're going through with that. But now he's at the point where he's like, look, give me a new trial. I don't have no choice but to move me back to Atlanta. So let's focus.
There's a Fed facility in Atlanta too, isn't there?
Yeah. We've asked many times, but we never expected them to move him there. I think the security level's too low for them for him to come there.
Now he's in the Feds because of a contract that the state of Georgia has with the BOP, with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I was wondering, how much does it cost the taxpayers of Georgia? How much has it cost them to have Imam Jamil in federal custody?
I might be mistaken, but I think it's six figures a year, but I think it was something like $300,000 a year. It was ridiculous.
For about 18 years now.
Yeah.
So that's still, Georgia taxpayers are still paying that.
Oh yeah. Every year he's out there, it's about $300,000. Because you have to pay for his housing and they're like, we're not footing the bill. He's not a federal prisoner, so it's on us.
Earlier, and I guess another injustice, earlier when you talked about how you talk to your father and people get irritated with you for not relating your conversation, I thought you were going to mention something about the gag order. Can you talk about that, or the unofficial gag order, as I've seen it referred to, and how that works?
For sure, yeah. I guess that would have been the first the first violation. During this trial, there was an official gag order. He couldn't speak at all to the media or anything like that. And so he couldn't combat those stories that were saying he was a cop killer and he had ambushed them. He wasn't allowed to do interviews. And now ever since, since then, he hasn't been allowed to do interviews, and it's been unofficial now because they just deny anybody who puts in an interview request, whether it be media or educational, so that's not a part of his sentence. But the reason they do it is because they feel like he inspires people to do things when he speaks, and he does. That's his gift, but that's not part of his punishment. That's not part of his sentence.
So would he get in trouble if he relayed a message to someone or tried to send a op-ed to the Washington Post, or was writing letters like a Soledad brother type of thing, put his letters together? Would he get in trouble for that?
I don't know. It wouldn't be official trouble, but he would probably get some backlash for it. But he's released letters, but that's not his gift. His gift was oration.
Yeah.
His gift was speech. That's what they took from him.
Yeah.
And because we don't read. We've had these confessions and things for 20 years, and people are telling me that they're just now seeing it because I made a video.
Yeah.
So, he needs to be able to speak. We don't read.
And somewhere along the line, the Muslim prisoners were trying to get him to be the imam, and he got in trouble for that, right?
Yeah, that was that was the second to last straw that got him shipped out of Reedsville. The last straw was the leader of the Aryan Nation became Muslim after they moved him into a cell next to my father. So that was when they shipped both of them out.
Yeah. So, Kyrie, I really appreciate the powerful testimony and story, and you going in detail. These details are really critical in giving life to the story. I just want to make sure that we are really aware of some of the things we can do today. I know you mentioned the petition. Outside of the petition, what else can people do to organize and to help and get and rally behind Imam Jamil Al-Amin?
Well, obviously, sharing the petition and getting other people involved. One of the things that we've started asking people to do is making quick little videos for their social media, which everybody does every day anyway. You just put your phone in front of your face and tell people why you support the Imam. If you know the Imam, tell an Imam story. Look at my page. Umar Reagan just did a video, and that as an example. You don't have to get that technical. You know, he did the picture-in-picture thing like it was Sports Center. You don't have to do all that. Just,
the high tech thing. I saw it. Mashallah, that was nice.
Just, you know, but those kind of things help people connect with him do the things that we do for, you know, everybody in the country just ran 2.13 miles for, you know, do these kind of things to get people involved in our campaign. And then once we submit, they tell you not to, but we're definitely going to call that office a lot because we need them to understand, once again, people care and people know you're looking at it and people want you to do the right thing. So there'll be that campaign. We just recently found the district attorney's Instagram page. So we're going to be working on that as well, trying to figure out exactly how to go about politely pestering him so we don't get in trouble, but he gets the point.
Right.
These are things, you know, just use your social media. That's, you know, we're all stuck in the house right now. So we're all looking at our phones. Use your social media, talk about the Imam, go to the website, pick one of those videos, pick a talking point that outrages you and talk about it on your, you know, do those kind of things. And that'll help continue the momentum because I'm putting everything I got into this. Like I just told Umar the other day, it's like every skill that I have, I'm using just for this right now. If it's rapping, I made a song. If it's video, we made some videos. We built some websites. So everybody, we all got skills. We're all talented. So, you know, I want to see some TikToks. Like, let's do all of that.
Absolutely.
I don't know how to use TikTok.
And these are minimal requests. I mean, these are very, very small, easy requests for people to do. So I appreciate that. Okay, so basically we're going to get into some questions. So I want to encourage everyone on the live feed to go ahead and submit your questions. Kyrie, I do have the first question for you. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Has there been an effort to reach out to socialist and or communist organizations for assistance?
I don't know, honestly. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if IJAN has, and I honestly don't even know which organizations fit into socialist and communist organizations. So I'd have to look it up and see, but just off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Okay. So far as the one, is it just IJAN, the main network that is working or has been actively working on the release of your father? Is there
IJAN and the Jericho movement? Yeah, those have been the primary movers behind it. And there's something else we can do. Reach out to your national organizations, your CARES, your ISNAs and ICNAs, the organizations that used to reach out to him when they needed somebody to speak at their conferences and things. Reach out and ask them where are they? We haven't heard anything.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's what I made that point. It was critical at the beginning because it was important for people to understand of what he provided and offered to the national and international Muslim community. And you know, that is needed at this time as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna him on a regular. But go ahead.
Could you reiterate real quick? When we talked offline, you mentioned that you noticed that there's a disconnect of the name H.Rap Brown and the name Imam Jamil Al-Amin.
Yeah, and it's more so in the immigrant community and the non-Muslim community. The immigrant community doesn't link Imam Jamil to H.Rap Brown, and the non-Muslim community doesn't even know that H.Rap Brown became Imam Jamil in a lot of instances. And so that's just part of the education that has to be done. If nothing else, you know, I don't even know how you go about making that connection. Honestly, I'm trying to do it, you know, with video and audio, you know, showing pictures. If I show a picture of Imam Jamil, I might write H.Rap Brown just so, you know, those kind of things. But I don't really know, aside from just reaching out to each one of those groups separately with the same message, just a different name in the headline. I don't really know how else to bridge that gap in a small period of time while we're in the process of doing what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I have another question for you, Kyrie. What is the response? I mean, you mentioned lightly, but I guess they want a little bit more elaboration. What is the response from non-African American Muslim communities in regards to your father? Has there been any?
Yeah, there's been a response. Silence is deafening. That's been the response. You know, I've been told that, you know, people have a hard time. Not even people I've been told, but people have had a hard time allowing me to or booking me to be able to go speak at some of these masjids. And My mother's done the 501c3s for them for free. And they're like, talk about Imam Jamil? Nah. But, one of the reasons, and it's not even necessarily a blame thing, but because we have to realize as an immigrant Muslim coming to this country, they see the American dream. They don't see what we've been through for the last forever since we've been here. They're like, hey, I'm gonna get over there and I'm gonna make it. Ain't no problems. White people gonna love me. Like, that's what they see on TV and everything when they come over here. And so for us to think that they're gonna have the same level of sense of need for struggle or disbelief, even for them to believe that, why would the government do what they would do? They didn't get a sense of that until 2001. That was their first taste of, oh, this is what it feels like when they don't like you over here.
Right.
So now they're starting to understand, and the younger generation, they've been people who were born 2000 to now, they're starting to understand, like, oh man, this is rough. We have our own struggles. We're dealing with the government on this level now. And so maybe what they've been telling us is true. Let's take a second look. And so, there are younger organizations who are reaching out to me like, bro, we've read up on the case and we want to learn more. But as far as the leadership at these older masjids, mom has been the word, and it's sad. It's sad.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that honesty. One of the questions is, how did the Imam cope when he was in a solitary confinement for all those years?
Oh, he's superhuman. I don't understand him at all. He's fine. We talk, and his mental is still what it's always been. He's just, if and when folks get to hear from him again, they're going to be surprised, like, oh wow, he's the same Imam. He's gonna look a little different because he's old, but he's the same Imam mentally, and that's amazing. I know I remember around year 15, I could feel his he's finally started to show anger a little bit more and frustration with the situation, which is natural. I'm surprised it took that long, but even that, he's managed to stay positive. And what we have going on now, we talk, like I said, every day, and he lets me know, like, look, this is the best I've felt in a long time about what we got going on. So, inshallah, this is the one.
Could you share some of the things he did, though? Does it, in relation to just kind of keep himself together spiritually?
Honestly,
or?
Spiritually, he didn't change. His program didn't change. That's what kept him together. But I have no idea what he's doing sitting in there by himself all day, every day. We don't really. He reads, and he makes sure he makes his 5 a day on time every day. But that's been his MO. That was his program out here. And so he, that's what he tells me. I keep my relationship with Allah. I build my relationship with Allah. I talk to Allah. That's all he got. That's all he got.
Right.
But alhamdulillah, that was his program before he went in. And so that's, I guess, what's been able to keep him going. He doesn't work out anymore so much as he used to because he can't. He's older, but and brittle. He has things going on, but his mind is sharp. And I think it's because of his relationship with his Lord. So I guess that's it.
That's the key. Another question, and we got a couple coming in, so I'm just going to fire them off to you. But would it be appropriate to contact Sean King to ask him to get involved just for the sake of his following?
We've reached out. Umar reached out to him. He sent him a video. He sent him the videos that I've been circulating, and he actually liked the DM, so we know he received them. But I think the more people that do reach out to him and tag him and things will get his attention a little bit more, because he's a personality as well. So when they do things, they like to know there's an audience that they're going to be able to pick up, as well as introducing us to theirs. So if we can show him, again, once you start to show people that people care, it's easy to get those names involved because they want a piece of the pie. Not to say that their motives are that, it's just that's a part of it. They're influencers, so they want to broaden their span of influence.
Right, absolutely.
So yes, let's reach out some more.
Sean King. So we're gonna go for it. What can be done to help his current situation regarding his health while he remains in custody?
Well, we're working our way through the internal processes. That's what you have to do when in the federal pen, probably in all pens, but definitely in the federal pen. So we have one more level of grievances that he has to submit inside, and once that's done, we'd have to file an actual lawsuit. So what actual people can do. It's not much because the people involved in the internal reviews and things, there's no phone number to them. There's no way to bug them or bother them. So it's not much, just make dua, really. That's all we got right now. And hope that one of these grievances, hopefully when we get to that last level, they won't want us to sue them because their rules say they're breaking the rules, not us. He's a level 4, he's in a level 3.
Right.
So they know we'll win a lawsuit. And so hopefully, inshallah, when we get to this next level, they'll go ahead and do the right thing, get him out of there and put him in Butner or one of the other, I think, 4 level 4 facilities that they have around the country.
Okay. Well, those are the questions. And I know we kind of went a little bit over, just a few minutes over our time, but I wanted to just personally thank you, Kyrie, for being with us today and being so candid and honest and really allowing us to reintroduce ourselves, reattach ourselves to H.Rap Brown, Imam Jamil Alameen. I think we should all get in the habit of saying both names so that people can, make those connections. That's another thing I think people can do. But I just wanted to thank you, brother, for being here.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Could I add something before we get out of here?
Yeah, of course.
Well, one, I just wanted to acknowledge and shout out some of the people I've seen in the chat. Some of the
Please.
OGs, Bilal Sunni Ali, Wahad was watching. Imam Abdul Musa from Masjid Al-Islam in DC, who I know had been supporting Imam Jamil, from day one because I was there. I saw J.R. Valerie from Block Report, San Francisco Bayview newspaper, who may have been one of the last people to actually interview Imam Jamil before the gag order. I don't know.
I talked to JR the other day. He's been a big help recently as well. He's helping us do quite a bit. I got to call him tomorrow. My bad, JR. I know I was supposed to call you today.
Right. But I also wanted to say, and I think, Kyrie, you mentioned the same thing the other day, man. Like, we got so many, people who have love or say they have love for, Malcolm X, for Martin Luther King, for people who are no longer with us. And when you, say, you have so much love and respect and influence and inspiration from a personality like that, there's no accountability for it. But when you have someone like Imam Jamil, who was able to survive, that era, like they tried to kill him. He was shot, 2-3 times. They blew his car up. He, alhamdulillah, wasn't in it. So he survived. He survived, and then he went on to do the type of work that you would expect him to do, and become a Muslim and actually putting the Sunnah into practice. This was something Malcolm didn't have a chance to do. He was with the nation. Then, he went on Hajj and he made his Shahada when he was in Saudi Arabia and came home. And a year later, so we don't know what he would have done, but we know what Imam Jamil did. He followed the Sunnah. He established the Salat, built a community, a nationwide, community, and has done that and continued to do it fearlessly, has never wavered. And, this is one of the people who's deserving support. And so people gotta, be real with themselves, and look themselves in the mirror, and either you down for the cause or you're not. And if you're not, at least get out the way.
Just get out the way. If you're not, just get out the way. I promise we will be mad at you, but we won't say nothing. Just be over there.
Right. That accountability piece is really important to mention, us being accountable. It's easy to rally, like you said, it's easy to rally around someone that's no longer here, but someone that's here and that you got to follow that through, that's a whole nother level. Kyrie, we need to end, but it's like 2 more questions. I'm just gonna real quick. Okay, so there's talk about a book by Imam Jamil being in the late stages of release. What is the status of it?
It's done. I just have to, I'm his editor now, his graphic designer, his web designer, his campaign manager. So I got to design some things real quick and get the cover done. But the publishing company is waiting on me, so it'll be out soon. That's why it says coming soon on the website. Somebody actually ordered it, so I had to make it sold out. So I appreciate that. But yeah, he wrote it. It's called Rap DNA. He wrote it a few times over the last 20 years. He's rewritten it and added things. So now he said he's ready for it to be released. So we're going to get that done. And a lot of people ask me online, I forgot about this. A lot of people ask me what happened to the documentary and things like that. The documentary actually had to be morphed into a mini series, primarily because a lot of the people we reached out to be in the documentary would initially agree to be in it, and then would, I guess, talk to the wrong or right people, and they would come back and tell us, we can't do it. And so it got to be a little difficult. And so we're still working. We're working, myself, my brother, Masood, Abdul Haq, and Umar Reagan. We need to sit down real soon so that we can figure out the production schedule on that and the budget and when we'll be able to do anything with this COVID thing. But we're definitely still interested and gonna get that done, inshallah. So we want to tell his story on a screen sooner rather than later. So don't think we're not still working on that.
Okay. And just final question. Far as someone that wrote your father, is he able to respond to letters?
He's having a hard time reading.
Okay.
So if you're gonna write him, or if you wrote him in the past, unless the letters like this, it's gonna be difficult. So if you do want to write him, just write mad big or type and make the font pretty large so that he can see it. He doesn't mind. He can't. Otherwise, he has to wait until he can ask someone to read it for him. So.
Okay. All right. And is there last one? This is going to be the last question. But is there any way to release any of his audio to humanize his voice?
Yeah. If you go to YouTube, you type in Imam Jamil Alameen, it's
be able to come up.
A lot of stuff on there. You can listen to him back when he's H.Rap Brown. You can listen to him all the way up through, and on SoundCloud. All of his old cook bars are up on SoundCloud. Just go to Community Masjid on SoundCloud, and they have his cook bars up. So yeah, there's a lot, but he's famous. Like you just gotta look for him, but he's there.
Right, he's there. Well, Kyrie, thank you again so much. I appreciate you, brother. And Naji, thank you so much for being a dope co-host. I appreciate you for bringing your knowledge of the law to the conversation. Thank you for being here.
Facts. And Naji, I just realized he was the same person. At the beginning, right before we got on today, I was like, I think this Naji got to be the same Naji I'm dealing with IJ.
Really?
I was like, it couldn't have been a coincidence. But and my little brother been on here all night, and I forgot to say what's up. So appreciate you, JB, and Drew is on here too. Appreciate y'all. Salute.
Any final words, Naji, before we come up out of here?
Well, I saw another person in there, Taskia Smith, and her father, Issa Smith, and prayers to him. I know he's been sick, but they were, they've been involved with Ajan as well. So just wanted to acknowledge some of the people I knew to acknowledge in there. I know perhaps everybody.
The Imam sends his salams. The Imam tell me always, whenever we do things like this, to make sure I send his salams. And I spoke to him today. He only had 2 minutes left on his time, but he knew I was doing this. So he told me to make sure I sent his salams. And Assalamu alaikum, brother Issa Smith. He actually asked about you about 2 days ago when I spoke to him. So he sent his salams specifically to you. I didn't see you in there.
Okay. Walaikum salam. All right. Thank you so much, guys. This has been an amazing live episode event. Continue to share. This live will be up on our Dope Muslim Woman podcast page. So continue to share this episodes so that people that weren't here are able to see it. Thank you so much. Share the petition. Drop the petition one more time, or it's in the chat. Is it in the chat?
It's in the chat, but it's on Change. It's www.change.org/free Imam Jamil.
There you go. So make sure that we are actively getting involved and participating in this process. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a good night and a good rest of the Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.